Hey, there we go. Now we're live.
Boom. Some people have gone a whole show without hitting that live button.
Oh, no.
Some people have podcasts on Mondays.
Yep.
So how is that workshop? Is that what you call it, a workshop, or what are you going to?
I think so. So I'm going through the phenotype, one at a time, just recording content. And I have, like a master list of notes that are all related to each phenotype. And it's something like 80 pages of notes and 12 pages of references. And I'm basically just building out slides. And I get something like 40 slides on average for each phenotype. Of course, some are much larger and some are a little smaller. And I've always found teaching to be really solidifying for my own personal experience, like where I kind of understand something, where I'm feeling really grounded in the content. But once I start teaching it, I feel way more confident in it. It gives me like homework assignment to actually do something with it. And I don't know. So the teaching's always been like the last evolution of my own personal growth, I think. Like I need to do it in order to finalize my own learning. So this is as much for me as it is for the community.
Yeah. So on the phenotypes, what let's wet everybody's whistle here. Yeah. What is like the easiest one, the shortest one that you can put out there that says, hey, you know what, neurofeedback, if you have this, you can easily come on.
My favorite one is the low voltage fast. It's just my favorite. Now there's a lot out there that have a lot of implications, but the low voltage fast phenotype, I don't know that we have like a great, wraparound care system that includes that. We do have wraparound care systems like Alcoholics Anonymous if they happen to be drinking, which is common, but we don't have like a ton of medication management that works fantastic. It's not like, oh, I took this med and these problems associated with my phenotype vanished. That's just not part of the story for these people.
Mm-hmm.
And so neurofeedback does really bring them back into balance pretty consistently and in a leveled, permanent way. And I don't know anything that does that for the low voltage fast people, or I don't know anything that has been attributed to that level of success yet. And the research on it is beautiful. We need more, but the research we have is still beautiful. So when you can help someone that nobody else can really help in the same way, how do you not get excited about that?
And how many sessions do you feel like it takes before they start to notice with that phenotype? I'm curious.
Depends.
So the interesting, the research is all over the board, because I've seen studies that were like as short as 8 weeks. But they don't get the benefits on anxiety. They do get some of the benefits to like decreased cravings and decreased drug use or alcohol use. But in those smaller studies, like there's a Korean study, they didn't get the reduction in anxiety, which makes sense if you understand, okay, some people can train up alpha, but beta suppression takes longer. You're not going to get that in a short-term study. And so it depends on what you want. And I prefer with these individuals to keep them longer, but I also am very solution focused, which means that I only hold on to clients as long as they want to be held on to. I don't kind of push them into more training than they actually want. So there are cases where sometimes I just volunteer. So I'm a very generous person when it comes to clinical work. Sometimes I volunteer because I'm like I can see ahead further than you can. We're gonna comp you the rest of the next like 10, 20 sessions. We're just gonna keep you going for a while, because like they got kids or something, it's like, no, like, no, I'd like to see more alpha. I'd like to see less beta. Like, I know they're sober. I know they're feeling better. Maybe they're content, but
Anthony, I put in the chat notes, I don't know if you can see it, just a little link to tomorrow's show that points to Joshua's workshop. We're trying to promote his deal, and part of what he's talking about is the phenotypes workshop. And now that we have everybody on, I was just wondering if quick phenotype that's his go-to, and he was just talking about it.
Yeah,
I would think, like, wouldn't AA or Elon or any why can't those groups get in with us?
Well, I think they do to a degree. And I was looking at some of the literature for like AA, and, when you look up, the research compared to AA, neurofeedback wins. Now, it's not a competition because the clients that you're going to be successful with are going to be the ones that have been sober in AA for a while. They don't have to be sober for very long. But you need them sober during training. That's the key piece. You need them sober during training. I don't want to train someone who's drunk. In fact, the number one reason why training fails is that they just aren't sober in my lobby, and then I won't work with them. And I can use that as an example because it's happened so many times with this phenotype that it's not breaking HIPAA to say that. It's like, no, this is a lot of people I'm referencing. So that is like how therapy kind of ends. It's now I don't want to make it sound like, oh, they're all addicts. It's like, no, I work a lot with like the old apostolic Lutheran population. We have a huge amount of those individuals here and in our local area, and they're crazy about neurofeedback. They don't drink at all. And we see a lot of low voltage fast phenotypes from those communities as well, and they're all sober. They tend to have just anxiety issues or workaholism, and their targets are correctly targeted towards the phenotype as well, but it's not going to be addictions related. Does that make sense?
Do we have to call it cravings instead of addictions? Maybe we'll get more traction. The Ozempic,
broader.
Well, yeah, I think. Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh no, I was just saying. Yeah, it sounds like Pete wants to broaden it, but yeah, I had a question for you. So the research, you said it's 8 weeks to get addiction or craving benefit, but
that was
not
one study.
anxiety. What did you say?
Yeah, that was one Korean. There was a Korean study that showed that they didn't get the movement on anxiety in a very short-term study, but they did get movement on addictions and cravings. And I thought that was very appropriate compared to my clinical experience. I was like, that's exactly what I would expect, because we're not getting the beta down, but we are getting some alpha up.
How long does it take to get that beta down then, do you think?
At least 15 sessions. That's when it starts to move. And Jay tells me that when it moves, it can move quite quickly. So it's almost like once the nervous system mounts the response to those GABA aminobutyric acid receptor sites, the pruning process can be quite aggressive and quite quick. But it's getting the initial response at all that just takes a very long time. And and you just have to keep working and keep working and keep working before you get that mounted response.
Okay.
Hey, Sonia.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wait, this is a good question. Where's my book?
Yeah, I don't.
Mild cognitive impairment. Hold on. No, we've got something on here.
And then I minds Dr. Marie, wherever in the world she's traveling.
Sure. Yeah.
What are we looking
at?
Up?
Straight answer.
Sorry.
So Sonia, somebody new to the show. Hey, Sonia.
Hey, Sonia. Hey.
Hello to what extent, if at all, neurofeedback can be fruitful for kids with mild cognitive impairment?
There's a straight answer for this in the efficacy book, the evidence-based practices in biofeedback and neurofeedback 4th edition, applied psychophysiology and biofeedback book. This is like the book on evidence-based practices. I believe there's an efficacy for what she's asking for. So I want to try to find it.
I'm excited. This is going to be good.
I hope I'm not remembering it wrong. Sometimes the phrasing is different than I'm expecting. So I'm like looking in the wrong part of the table of contents.
While he's looking, I wanted to touch on Pete's question about, why doesn't it take off if we just change one thing? And the first thing I'll tell you, Pete, is just coming from social media world. It's really hard to stand out without a lot of funding. The number one way to stand out on social media is to purchase ads. And so what I mean by that is resources. And the resources, Andrew Hill brought this up. If you can't patent something, you can't get the same level of investment. You just can't. There's no snapping your fingers. But then the other thing is, I think it's complexity. I think it's like what Josh is saying here. It's like, well, 8 weeks maybe to help you with addiction, but maybe 15 before you see anxiety benefit. And like you said earlier, it depends. And I'm learning that brains are complex. I mean, go figure. But it's even when you have a great tool, it's complex. The other thing is, Pete, I can't help but think of, they have people, I mean, everyone has people on social media who are telling them, just take one pill of this supplement and it'll change your life. You know, just, this is going to get rid of all your anxiety.
Essential oils.
What is it?
Essential oils.
Yeah, essential oils. Or buy this PEMF, you know, one little device. Buy this neck pillow, you know, and people prefer the quicker. I mean, it makes sense that they prefer the quicker answer. I find, I have a friend who tries all this stuff. I mean, anything on social media they buy, and, you know, occasionally you get a little benefit. It's usually never as great as they claim, and they get rid of it. So we got a lot of competition, I guess, is the other reason.
We've always had competition.
And then medicine, I mean, medicine works. I mean, just gut feeling. Well, based on research, it works for like half of people. I have friends that would never give up their Adderall for any reason whatsoever, right? Like they almost will tell you, my career, I wouldn't have my career without my Adderall. So the idea that medication doesn't help anyone, I don't believe that. Now, I think it always has multiple effects. It has side effects. It has mixed consequences, but there's people benefiting. So we've got our work cut out for us. It's almost not surprising in a way.
Okay.
Here we go.
I don't know if this is a good time to butt in. So I was just looking through the efficacy ratings, and again, I don't know if I was thorough enough, but I hope I was. There's a few that are relevant to the question. You know, is neurofeedback fruitful for kids with mild cognitive impairment? We have a few to consider. You know, of course, there's the 5 out of 5 efficacy for ADHD. So, okay, well, that's not exactly mild cognitive impairment, though. You know, if you have severe enough ADHD, you wonder. There is a category in here called optimal performance, which may or may not kind of qualify, but HRV biofeedback has a 4 out of 5, which is, you know, efficacious standard. And then neurofeedback at this point has a 3, which is probably efficacious.
For the people that don't know, the scale is 1 to 5, right?
Yeah, 1 to 5, 1 being like no results, 5 being it's kind of the best thing that you could use, 4 being we know it works, 3 being it probably works, and 2 being it probably doesn't work, 1 being it doesn't. So we have essentially traumatic brain injury also to consider, which basically says it's a level 3, meaning it probably works for traumatic brain injury. And that means that there's some good studies in here that are placebo-controlled, that are of moderate size, but we probably need larger sampling groups. So,
well, mild cognitive impairment, does that include ADHD? Because that's a 5, isn't it? Or...
Yeah. So there's a few in here that probably should be considered that are higher rated, like 5 out of 5 for ADHD. And you're like, well, what is ADHD? Well, ADHD is like a whole bunch of things. So we've worked really hard for that efficacy rating. You know,
well, what
ADHD
is mild cognitive? Well, hey, Sonia, what do you mean by mild cognitive impairment? Like that could be me. I'm mildly impaired.
Yeah.
Especially at 2 a.m.
Just looking at Mayo, it's a condition with trouble with language and memory, but it's viewed as a precursor to dementia. That's the context in which it's most commonly spoken about. But it can also be resultant from injury, like a TBI, a concussion. Sure. That's just, go on, Josh.
No, I'm agreeing. I'm just agreeing. Yeah. I was kind of wondering where the brain brightener, you know, memory protocols fell in this efficacy book. I know Saul would know off the top of his head. That's why it'd be nice to get him on here. Because
that's a protocol for dementia. The brain brightening is what he's getting at, Sonia.
Just helps people cognitively age better. That's why I thought we'd find it in here, is because there were several studies with cognitive decline related to the elderly that were like several hundred people in several studies. And they actually did Wechsler IQ scale and showed increase in IQs. And like that's phenomenal, you know?
Yeah.
There you go, Sonia. Anthony, why don't you drill down what Sonia says.
She says symptoms like forgetfulness, lack of enough attention, difficulty in back and forth conversation. You know, my family is a senior care agency, and you know what you're describing, it's often dealing with seniors. You see those things. And I'll tell you, Sonia, and this is brand new. Well, and I don't say this to alarm you, because I think that there are treatments and things. But in the last month or so, 2 different studies came out. One said that they can see the signs of dementia in the brain as early as 24. And another, and I think they were using blood tests, another said you can see them as early as age 11. And the idea, though, I say that because, one, it gives us more idea what we're dealing with. So Josh can then find studies, you can how you think about it can be more precise. But also, it tells us, to me, I'm hopeful we can get ahead of it. If we can make a difference in a senior, I mean, Nick Dogris, who's a big practitioner, Sonia, he spoke at AAPB, a conference in Orlando for people in this industry, and Association of Applied Biofeedback, I think is I don't know the acronyms, I just know it's big. Anyway, and he had a patient in there with not even mild, like moderate cognitive impairment is how he described it, like a 60-some-year-old. And he had them in there, and their partner, and they came in, that person stopped sundowning. So sundowning is when dementia patients, they lose focus towards the end of the day. But what I'm saying to you is, I feel like and Josh can speak to the studies, we can find studies. If we can, I just think it's encouraging. If we can make a difference in a senior, then I feel like maybe even that can tell us we can have difference in children too, if your child is dealing with it.
Oh yeah. And anecdotally, we've got some insane stories. Now, clinically, maybe to more functionally answer Sonia's question, we regularly do cognitive testing with kids, and I give them either attention tests or a full cognitive test, battery, like the Craos cognitive test is what I use. I also use the QEEG Pro cognitive test and a few others. And we are very consistent in getting good results with kids. We have a lot of different types of protocols, and we start with evidence-based approaches. And if those don't work, because maybe 20% of them don't learn very well, we'll shift to something that's more evidence-based. And then if that doesn't work, we'll switch to something experimental, all with informed consent. Generally, we've failed very, very few times, mostly because in research, you try one thing and you see how it works. In practice, you're allowed to maneuver around, you're allowed to mix and match, you're allowed to finesse, you're allowed to add modalities, you're allowed to mix modalities. And you get higher results in clinical practice than you do in research, because you customize it more and you fiddle with it more, and you're also starting and stopping different things to get better results. And so generally, I'm very used to seeing cognitive improvements in kids, to functionally answer your question. I wanted to give you a research-based answer, though.
No, that was beautiful.
Joshua, what do you tell people like Sonia? I'm assuming she's got kids or deals with kids. To get an EEG, I mean, when you go to each different grade level, like kindergarten, middle school, like when should you go in and a kid get an EEG? When you get a physical, like what?
If you're gonna bring your kid in for a QEEG, which is what we do, you're gonna have to work with someone who's fairly specialized if you're gonna bring them in earlier than, like, say, age 6 or 7. And part of the reason why is because some of the brain waves have more variability, quite a bit of variability, until the age of like 6 or 7, I believe. We do a little bit of contracting with like a pediatric neurologist who can help us out if we see something that's just way off the beaten path. And half the time, it's way off the beaten path in a totally acceptable way. But who knows? We don't know, because what's acceptable with kids is like to the wind, and you want to work with somebody who understands that. And so that's important to know. If you're working with older kids, there's still more variability until they're adults, but generally the average practitioner or a skilled practitioner can get ahead of that. Typically, it's not like the variability is a lot, but there's a bit of variability until they're like 18. Then some of the rules become more finite. So when you have a QEEG, maybe even I would add some cognitive tests that I like cognitive tests that have neurocorrelates. So cognitive tests that actually speak to regions of the brain. So then I've got a finding in one part of my brain because the QEEG says so. And I can see that in the raw data, and I can quantify that in images. And then I've got a cognitive test that says I've got some sort of cognitive attention deficit of some kind, or memory deficit of some kind. And it says that there's something going on in that same part of the brain. So they agree with each other. And then the parent or the client is complaining of a symptom that also makes sense for that region. So we've got this kind of trifecta of understanding. That's what we're going for. Okay. And that's what we aim for with every case when we're doing an assessment. That data becomes very, very useful, even if you walk away at that point. And that's what kind of Pete's getting at, is if, let's say, you get into a car accident or there's a football injury or something like that, you can retest and what changed and how much did it change? Was that how they were before? We can actually know what shifted. Sometimes that data has some interesting relevance for implications. Sometimes it informs symptom change, and sometimes it helps us get back. There's all kinds of really interesting academic programs in Texas, I believe, where they actually try to train the football players back to normal before they go back into play.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, if you have to take a physical every year for school, why can't you take a mental every year? Or why isn't that included with it? Like if you turn 50, you got to get a colonoscopy. Okay. Like why isn't there different ages in there where, hey, you know what? You should get your noodle checked out.
Because they haven't validated EEG and mental health to the degree that they validated other medical exams. I mean, that is just the answer. Now, we would disagree. I don't know that our evidence base will be as high as like a cardiogram, an echocardiogram.
Sure.
Like and I agree that we need to pursue this. But
I'm kind of wondering, like, it isn't obvious to me what they...
Let me just get this one point out. Sorry. The doctor's not trying to deny you treatment that he thinks you need. Like doctors are generally nice people, Pete. Nobody's trying to say, yeah, we know EEG works, but screw you. It's like they don't even know about the EEG, first off. And then two, I mean, a lot of our studies only have 30 people. You don't dictate something for a nation for a study that had 30 people, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to sing neurofeedback to the heavens. But so there you go, Josh.
I agree with you, Anthony, and I also find that there are strange exceptions in medical where a study on 30 people does make something rise to the top, and it isn't neurofeedback. And so it's kind of like yes, that's true, but there are exceptions and they're not us. And we don't understand all that. And so we just don't understand it,
There's politics too, and there's money too. I agree those things are factors. I don't think that malice or malevolence. But to speak to something you said, Josh, so I have a study, basically it was a review. 40% of medical treatments have what's called a Cochrane review, and that is the thing viewed as the highest form of medical evidence. So that's about half. So you're right. Now, there's going to be levels now below the Cochrane, and I don't know where neurofeedback links up, but I know that, for instance, FDA drug trials, they tend to have a lot more people than us. But anyway, I just resist the idea that all this is simple. And
I also resist the idea that the best thing to compare us to is medication. I think that I could be wrong about this, but I think that comparing us to physical therapy standards is a far better metric. Okay. So like think about the level of attention and attunement that's required per person, per practitioner. Okay. And then think about the level of skill for the practitioner required for the actual, administration of care. Okay. You can administer treatment through pills in all kinds of interesting forms with all kinds of blind mechanisms, with all kinds of people who don't even know what they're doing, partially just because it's so different than us. It doesn't even compare to us. But physical therapy has kind of like the same limitations. We're kind of restricted by skill. We're kind of restricted by location, and we're kind of restricted by time. We can't just hand them a bottle of 90 pills and we've done 90 treatments. You can't do that. So I think that the comparison is something we should reject.
I think that's cool. And I want to answer their questions, but I think that was a very good, I'll be thinking about that point. Sonia had a quick question. She said, is having a lot of slow brain waves, delta, in different parts of a kid's brain typical of autism? And so I just wrote to her that, to my knowledge, that is one of the main autism phenotypes identified by Jay and by Jaime Pineda at UCSD. And then Josh can maybe speak to that before we get to Radar's question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. I apologize. I do see, some clients with lots of global delta with autism. They can be ones that struggle more than some of your higher functioning autistic clients typically. Sometimes I think about having their gut balance looked at when I see the global delta and the autistic presentation. I don't know for sure that that's correlated, but I've seen that pop up more often, that they have large gut imbalances. And that's not something I'm sure of yet, but that is a trend. And so it's like, okay, this subphenotype within autism, maybe there's the gut balance thing is a little bit more like aggressive. And so there are functional providers who do that kind of, stool testing and hormone balancing and prebiotics and probiotics.
Sonia, I have heard what Josh is saying. I've heard that too, from a couple big practitioners that if you have a lot of delta, it's very often related to dysbiosis or gut bacteria issues. I have heard functional medicine in that regard to this problem. I will also tell you, and I don't have certainty on this, but I think they say like about half of autism sufferers have sleep issues, and sleep affects the gut. And they can show immediate changes in gut bacteria based on the amount of sleep that somebody got. There's like a recent study, it's like within 2 hours it changes. And so there's neurofeedback that can help with sleep. But I think it does, you mentioned the child's cognitive impairment. My friend in Orlando, Alex Sanchez, he's very good at, and I'm sure Josh is too, there's many people like this, that they can look at the EEG and it gives them an idea, oh, I think this child isn't sleeping. Oh, I think this child may be an apnea sufferer or dysbiosis, what have you, and they can then refer out. And so I think if you can get a hold of a practitioner, maybe Josh, maybe Alex, that can do those things and bring in the other modalities, I think you'll be in good shape. And then, Radar had a question about, it looks like a very involved one. And then we have Joy.
Hey, Joy, come on back, Joy. Get on this side of the table. Come on, miss you.
Josh,
what I don't know if it'd be properly referred to as a phenotype, but there is within your autistic groups, there's like your kind of
Josh, it's the first phenotype in Jay's paper. I just looked it up. It's delta. He says it's related to learning disability very often. So perhaps if you could resolve it, maybe it would help. And then I don't know if you want to do radar.
Some of those phenotypes, there's like a lot of different things mixed into them. So I kind of think of it as a subphenotype because it's like, okay, when you think about those phenotypes, it's like we do see that not all of them are autistic. There's clearly a couple different things going on in these groups, whereas like your low voltage fast, there's usually just like, not that there's only one, but there's usually like a clearly like gene 4 thing going on here. And then there's a few other, like your unstable people that are having epilepsy. There's like a whole slew of things that are going on with those groups, So it's not like you have one thing going on with each phenotype. There's sometimes the case, and then you have some that are a basket of different things.
The kitchen is cooking tonight. I can't keep track of it all. Josh, you said you had 5 or 6 methods of reducing frontal hyperarousal. Can you give examples of this or go into detail?
Well, off the top of my head, hyper, which is specific, not hypo, but hyper, it sounds like. So I'm thinking hyper, Hyper would be like finding, excessively fast alpha of more than 13 hertz, or probably more likely high beta. That's what I'm guessing they're saying. Now, maybe they meant hypo, which is something you'd see more often. But if you're referring to hyper, maybe the first thing we do is like neurofeedback. There are other options that people will do, like there's TDCS. I won't give super specific instructions, but clinicians who are competent will know how to reduce activation. Though I will caution, people need to specialize in being able to target the anterior cingulate. They can't just be like, oh, I'll do it. Like getting it down that far is like a skill. I talked to Dave Seaver about getting to the anterior cingulate with TDCS. It's not straightforward. You have to do it a very specialized way. So don't see someone who's not adept at that, who doesn't know how to do that. Or if they're willing to consult with someone like Dave Seaver, that's a different story. And then, I don't like talking about medications, but there's like one drug class that lowers the excitability a little bit of high beta. I just don't like to talk about meds though. I don't like to get too specific because people are like, oh, I'll go ask for that. Okay, I'm like not trying to direct meds, and it doesn't work that well with high beta.
Oh, this goes right to your workshop there, Joshua.
That was good stuff.
Are there any other EEG markers that are indicators of other health complications, like how you said delta can be a sign of gut dysbiosis?
Well, I mean, sure. I think that when you are doing a map, there's probably at least a half a dozen to a dozen things you could see that would get you a little bit concerned about somebody, whether it be a large enough persistent focal slowing would make you, if it's large enough and persistent enough, you'd want them to probably see a neurologist. If they are a low voltage slow map, you tend to want them to go see a doctor about that if they haven't already. If they have an alpha peak that's drifting, too far down too fast for their age, below 8 hertz, sometimes that's an appropriate time to send them to their doctor. And Joy, by the way, someone mentioned Jay's paper. It's Jay and Joy's paper, by the way.
That's right.
I'm aware, and I know that's why she was at. This is his paper on autism phenotypes. I did get, it was with a person named Michael Linden, actually, but I can't post links, but I'll try to post the name if somebody's interested.
Yeah. I think Pete can post links. So if you put them in our special comment,
in our love box,
our love box. What? Okay, our love box. That's what I'm calling it from now on. That's the new rule. All new attendees will be permanently confused and worried.
All right, Joy's got a client, so I want to make sure we got all of her stuff taken care of. Please identify which of the phenotypes are you referring to. All the ones that are in your paper, Joy.
Yeah. So if she's asking about the workshop,
the autism,
I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, though I will probably talk about maybe what the future might hold. I'm going to give heavy credit to Joy and Jay when I'm doing the workshop pretty regularly throughout the workshop, because they did the seminal work on it, and it has been prospectively validated since that work. I think it was 2007, if I remember correctly. Joy can correct me. And it's been so grounding for me to learn that. I was probably, I was doing, to be blunt, some will shun me for this, which I'm fine with. I did great work with it. I enjoyed it. But I was doing the Othmer method when I first started, and I was getting great results with it, and again, some people have already tuned out from hearing me say that, but I wanted to get into brain mapping, and I wanted to do evidence-based protocols, and I wanted to be more well-rounded, and I didn't want to be, I was into learning what I didn't know, which is the only reason why I got in the field in the first place. And so I was going to keep that going, and I was learning how to look at these automated maps, and I could see that there was so many blind spots my head could spin. And I was sickened by how people were just like just do the maps and then train this up or train this down. I'm like, well, what about, and I had like 15 questions and no one knew how to answer them. And I was sickened by how much blind spots there were in these mapping process. And it wasn't until Jay taught me phenotypes that I finally, and then I learned how to read the raw data, that my feet landed on something hard. And I was like, okay, I can see where I'm at in the field. I can see what I need to learn, and I can see how I need to learn it. And I can move forward with confidence and competence. And I did not have that in brain mapping. And I wasn't sure that I was going to continue in practicing evidence-based protocols until that happened, because I needed some basis by which to orient myself. And I was not getting that without phenotypes.
Sonia, go ahead. You can ask 4 more questions. Then I'm going to have to ask questions. All right, we took care of Joy, I think.
Josh, I was going to ask, Andrew Hill talks a lot about tailoring the SMR frequency. And then I heard another perspective, and I'm open to either way, but this clinician said, I find if it doesn't really work with the sort of default 12 to 15, that tweaking the frequency doesn't really seem to help that much. I didn't know, just thought I'd get your take on it since we're here.
So it depends on what they mean, because they might be saying 2 different things and just not understanding each other. It's kind of like if you have a non-learner, tweaking the frequency doesn't help. That's true. Like, that's absolutely true. Okay, but if you do have a learner and they're over aroused, you should tweak the frequency. If you do have a learner and they're under aroused, you should tweak the frequency. You'll know that when you're there.
Okay.
Radar asked, are we all going to the Suisun City Summit? I will be there. I'll be at the bar.
Let's go. Yes.
All right, let's see. There you go. Sony's question.
To take.
Definitely not me.
Would neurofeedback be effective with kids with autism? Well, let's see. We've still got the book out.
What number? What number you got?
Yeah,
oh, Ida, Triona. Okay, we kitchen is cooking tonight, baby.
So at this point, autism has a 3 of probably efficacious. So that just means that we've got some good studies, and some of them are double-blind, placebo-controlled, and they're probably of moderate size. But we've got to do some more work.
Anything on the gut issue?
This is not unusual when you have multiple groups within a descriptive category of autism. So autism is a descriptive category. It's not talking about one thing. They may look alike, but there's a few things in that group. Okay. And so we have to improve all of them in order to get an efficacy rating. Well, that's hard. Okay.
Yeah. Like when Jay has like 7 autism phenotypes in the autism paper I keep describing. And it's like, if there's 7 categories of something, maybe these are different on some level.
Is that the paper you published out there? I'm going to take that.
That's what posted for me. Yes.
That's going in my workshop. I'm glad I came today.
Yeah.
There we go. Stolen. There we go.
Ida, Haida, what's a flat map?
There we go.
Yeah. Maybe Josh can answer. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Joshua.
Let me see. A flatbed. Let's see. I have a question considering flat maps. Is
that like an overhead of your head? Is that?
Oh, yeah. So like maybe so flat maps. They could be, but I find them to be more demonstrative than evaluative. So like now that doesn't mean that I'm not going to occasionally use them to validate maybe maps that are a little bit tedious, or some findings like phase that are a little bit tedious that you can still see with the naked eye, but you'd like to see it on the maps a little bit. But a little bit more than not, the mapping process is, I would say it's more demonstrative than evaluative. And I will make people angry having just said that, but it is how I feel, having done both for years. So I prefer to have read it in the raw data so that I'm sure what it is. And I don't know how to feel confident having not done it. So now it's great to have demonstrative things, and it's great to have this quality check too.
I wanted to touch on something for Sonia real quick. Sonia, on the dysbiosis, because it came up again. I did just want to say, and again, like Jay would say, it's always dependent on the EEG. But you mentioned stomach issues. I have heard stories of autistic children. Well, this was a teenager that they went and received neurofeedback, and it seemed to help with their stomach. To give you an idea, this person described being nonverbal and having stomach issues, and they said that they would moan a lot because they had that much pain. After receiving neurofeedback, and I think it was SMR neurofeedback, they're verbal now, and that stomach pain is gone. And maybe that relates to something. This is, I don't know if I read this or I'm thinking this. Jay talks about something called a stomach seizure, which can cause, there's a part of the brain, the posterior insula, can cause, it controls stomach emptying. And if there is a kind of, it's a seizure, it's a subclinical seizure, you're not convulsing, but the stomach may be. And so that can be a source of pain. And the last little tidbit in this, Sonia, is that, as I said, subclinical things, SMR treats them. SMR also can treat sleep, and sleep is often impaired in a lot of autistic kids. So there is probably like a constellation of like, doesn't sleep, stomach troubles, and, could use a better SMR trains the sleep spindle. And it also helps with seizures. So, and last thing, epilepsy is elevated in kids with autism. So
a lot.
less of a stretch. Yeah, thank you, Josh. Yeah, so it's less of a stretch to think all these things, the sleep, the epilepsy, and the stomach issues could all be
I think is it 70%? Joy will remember. It's either 60 or 70% in terms of like having those isolated discharges, which is something that the researcher said. I'm not saying that, but that's what the researcher said in survey.
I think Swanson is the guy Jay always cites on that. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, that's the guy who does the research on it. There's one other thought with the gut biome. My preference is to have like wraparound care where the gut biome is being addressed by a gut specialist, like a functional doctor, or sometimes like functional hormone specialists, which are like nurses. They can do this kind of work too. But if you say, well, can the neurofeedback still treat it? If you had to, if you didn't have the wraparound care because there just wasn't available, there is still some reasonable hope that the neurofeedback would help and still stick. And, well, how's that possible? And the research on the gut biome is weird, but the gut bacteria that you're missing that you need does exist in other places in the body, and they do hitch a ride on cells and show up when they're needed. And there's some signaling that occurs in the brain or in the vagal nerve to coordinate some of that. We barely understand it, but we've seen enough of it to understand that it's far more complex than we know, and that there is a way to do like a bottom-up solution and a top-down solution. I prefer to do both.
I like it. And I agree with Josh. What you're saying makes so much sense because, so for instance, we think of, I eat fiber to improve, or I take probiotics, whatever, to improve my gut microbiome. But you have one in your mouth. And if it is off, you will get sick more. They have found this. And so, but they also have found if you just eat more fiber, it also improves your mouth microbiome and your nasal microbiome. It's all connected. And one of the things I want to say, Sonia, is, and obviously pursue all of Josh's advice. And I know things are hard with kids, but basically some studies have found eating fiber is more impactful than taking probiotics to improve your gut health.
I don't doubt that at all.
Obvious. There's
I would think that there's probably eating fiber in the way that kids won't do, like vegetables. Like that's probably that's actually probably doing both. Like where does your gut biome come from? Like I suspect that we're supposed to be eating a lot more vegetables. I have 3 kids under the age of 10. I cannot get them to eat vegetables. I ate a mountain of vegetables today. I can't get my kids to eat 2 vegetables. I don't know. No wonder they got issues.
Hey, Treona, on the same topic, opinions on doing just C3 beta, C4 low beta separately versus C3, C4.
Well, attention, sleep, mood. I don't know. What are you going for? It depends on what you want. It depends on what you were working with before, brainwave wise, and it depends on what your goals are, I suppose. There's a lot of details around that help us fill in. I think that it's a classic protocol.
Radar wants to know what Elon Musk's EEG looks like, his QEEG looks like.
Oh, gosh. Didn't we have this conversation in private, I think, once?
Before or after the ketamine and the...
oh, gosh.
What does Asperger's look like on the Q? What are you going to see?
T6 alpha is the key finding. It's in that paper, Josh, the autism paper we keep. Yeah.
And he's probably more stable. So you said like 70% of them have like, instabilities. He's probably in the 30% that doesn't have instabilities. I'm not.
Those are pretty irritable, but yeah.
Well, maybe these symptoms lean in more favorable ways. Like if I had a lifestyle like his, I'd get migraines. So I have the T6 alpha neuromarker. It doesn't attenuate with eyes open, which is kind of an autistic neuromarker, and I have the instabilities, which is seen 70% of the time.
Have you had success treating that marker, or do you like in yourself or others? I mean, it's whatever you're comfortable talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I don't care. I was told it wasn't trainable, but it does seem to be coming down.
Oh, good.
So I don't know who's right.
I'm almost curious who told you that, because to be honest, I have seen a lot of trouble training that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Hey, Lynn, welcome to the chat. Posterior what? For gut issues? I don't remember.
The posterior insula is what I was getting at. And I'm not saying that this explains. Posterior insula causes what Jay and doctors have referred to as a stomach seizure. And it's because it's the area of the brain that controls peristalsis or stomach emptying. And so if there's a big discharge of energy there, it can make that stomach wrench, basically.
Is that the left? No,
it might be
right posterior.
Is it right posterior? Might be one versus the other. You're right.
I think it's right posterior.
Is that what my Wegovy does?
Wegovy does increase peristalsis. It does. It speeds stomach emptying. Yes.
Speeds or slows?
Oh, good point. Yeah, it probably slows it. Sorry about that.
Just saying, the video editor speaking up.
Oh yeah. Now, interestingly, in mice, they found that. Well, is that what that's saying? Yeah, there's a mouse study I was thinking. But anyway, go on.
Walt Disney.
There
we go.
The way that the drug Ozempic is working is it's working at the level of the brain. They thought maybe it was working directly on the stomach, but it's working on the brain. And the way they know that is they genetically engineered mice just to get rid of the stomach GLP receptors, which you do have. They said the drug retained almost all of its effect, basically. So it's pretty interesting drug. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, Radar's saying it slows emptying, which sounds correct in hindsight.
Is everybody keeping track of this? I mean, the kitchen is just... Cook's going to walk out.
Yep.
So Hida says she thinks it was the left insula C3, but you know, at least I think that's what she's answering there.
It's possible. I have all the literature in my notes for the coursework, and I need to review them.
If you clue everybody in on what you got cooking, we're doing our Thursday show tomorrow. We'll have a little snippet in the middle and the end of the show talking about Joshua's workbook. Can you explain to us what your workbook is about, Joshua?
Well, part of my own learning process is that to help solidify my own learning, I found the best way for me to really finalize my own learning, really makes me feel good about something, is to teach it. And I think it helps me consolidate it in a way that I just can't convince myself to do without having like a deadline and an assignment and some project to work on. And so, you know, gathering up all the information, building slides, and then building lecture, getting feedback, and then redoing it, kind of going through this mantra process that takes probably a month. And I'm just going through each phenotype, and I plan for it to take like a year, and I'm making it well produced. So it's going to have a nice green screen with visual aids and lots of special software integration to increase the learning experience. And when I'm doing editing with the data, that helps you see what I'm doing and smooths out the actions on the screen so that the individual can follow along clearly. All that is, you know, something I probably spent a year mulling over and readying myself to do. And it's as much of a benefit for me as it is hopefully for the community. So it will be, what I'm hoping for is just a simple 40-hour workshop that teaches a very thorough walkthrough of the introduction to phenotypes, which will prepare people for a mentoring relationship of some kind. Hopefully.
That's
we'll
good. Yeah. And I saw your first video and it was very, you know, well produced. So
thanks. I think I made a second one that I'm a little bit more proud of. But I appreciate that. Yeah. We'll see.
We'll put them in each show, Joshua. Don't you worry.
Radar says he's going to the Sassoon, or he's thinking of going. Apologies, Radar.
Well, now he heard you're not going, so he doesn't want to go. I said, I'm
Pete says he'll the bar tab is on him or something though. I did want to mention a success story since we're getting to the end. A new friend that has had somebody who was trained by Jay do their EEG and their training, etc. They had the signs of a TBI or concussion in their EEG, and they are getting that treated now, and their mood is notably improving. It is very obvious. You can see it. And that was one of the things that they were told may improve. And so just from that treating of the basically they have an instability in that area, transient. and treating that has been really, it's creating a really nice effect for them. So it's just so cool to see those stories. I just like to get them out, you know.
What other stories have been happening in that chat group of yours? What am I talking about, Anthony?
Oh yeah, science and technology discoveries. I put the hardcore stuff in Brain Master, I will say, because it's more focused on EEG. You know, there was a woman in there. She says that in Brain Master this past 24 hours, she's an EEG tech at a hospital, and she was inquiring. She goes, you know, I figured neurofeedback people might know some cool stuff. And Josh was on that thread, and it was a thread about how autoimmune sufferers, they likely have elevated alpha, and they have double the risk of mental health issues, is what it said. And she wrote on there to say, you know, I always see, or I tend to see when I do the EEG on them, they all have elevated alpha.
There's more to say on that, and I don't know, because I've had cases that I've consulted with Jay on, and he said, oh, it's got an autoimmune field to it. And I know that the individual in your thread was asking you for more information. What about the alpha? What about the more? And it's hard to articulate it. Like it's the way that it diffuses a little bit differently, maybe broader. I don't know how to describe it because I'm not confident on it yet. And mostly I'm taking these things to consult with Jay, and Jay's actually done some research. I don't know if it was published, but he did some research where he was able to see that there was an alpha-based behavior associated with some autoimmune cases. And I have no idea if he published that or if it's just something he logged away and now he tells people like me. But I do have a few maps that I have releases on that were autoimmune driven that had this alpha. So I was really, really tempted when I seen that thread to go study them and then to try to answer the question. But I also felt like it was too anecdotal, so I didn't.
Well, I'm sure, that was cool. And I'm sure if you ever do have a chance to do that, even if it's anecdotal, we would all benefit. So I think that was really cool. So
and the fact that Jay said this is the stuff that I saw in my lab, that's what made it more valuable to me as a case example.
Yeah. Oh, I think 100% it sounds like you're on the right track. Radar says, so does this mean you can train away autoimmune to some degree? And I don't know the answer, but it's making me want to know too.
50-50. It's a coin flip. Yeah, it's a coin flip. Yeah, it's a coin flip.
Hey,
it just happens sometimes and you're like, yay.
Yeah. Some of the people here, we got something from Lynn. Will the phenotype talk address ways to train them?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're even going to go into, and I don't want to misspeak here, but with like the low voltage fast phenotype, which is like the one that I literally have the slides up that I'm going to record like tomorrow. It goes over 3 variants. So here's different protocols for different scenarios, and here's real examples that we're going to review in real data.
Wow.
And why those protocols are different for these different subtypes. They're not very different subtypes. They're just like slightly different, why you would make different clinical choices. So we're going to go that level. Yeah. So when we not just do an hour on here's the 11 phenotypes and why, it's like here's 2 or 3 hours on each phenotype. Wow. So we're going to actually take enough time with each to get our hands dirty a little bit, enough to know a little bit about them. Now, with stuff like instabilities, we're not even going to scratch the surface of the amount of types that are out there. It's not going to happen. And so there's just going to be that, like, don't think it's exhaustive at all. Okay. But some of them might be covered. Okay.
Triona says, it sounds like a great class, but I missed details when you'll be offering the workshop.
I'm still deciding. That's why it kind of felt risky. Like, hey, look at what I'm doing, Anthony. Look what I'm doing, Pete. And maybe if I try to offer, it early, maybe I'll have something to offer in 2 months when I'll have like, here's 3 phenotypes and an intro.
Well, if you're part of this Q&A, it could be part of the soft launch where you could get feedback to help tweak things. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know that if I'm doing this to the highest standard that I want to do it,
Radar doesn't know what the hell we're talking about.
It might take me up to a year to get every module out. And I'm okay with releasing them before I have every module out, which part of me feels mixed about. But I also am like, do I want to sit on some of these modules for a year? No. I don't know.
Well, Radar is missing the context. And Joshua's got a nice little workshop that he's putting together that we're starting to promote. And where is this class?
Where ours? Yep. Yeah, there is a promo video that I think I handed over to Pete and let him do what he wants with. And I think again, it's probably a little premature, but I'll have something to drop probably in 2 months. Some like a group, like here's a couple modules that people can have. So
yeah, I can already tell this class is going to be like the ultimate crash course for this. Not that you could become necessarily a master, because I know you're always learning, meaning the attendee, but it sounds like the best intro. I already know it's going to be the best intro to the phenotypes, I could imagine.
Well, I took probably 10 QEEG classes, and this is an attempt to do the class I wish I had. So like
he wants to sign up, Joshua. Come on.
Yeah.
Where are we signing up?
Fair enough. I'll see what I can do. I want to have something of substance before now maybe I could do a sign up where people want to be notified when it's ready. That's totally fair.
How about this next week? Next week, Joshua, to kick off the show, because it starts off slow, then people start showing up. Maybe we run through one of them if we figured out how to do shared screen on this thing.
Yeah, we can look into that. Yeah, there might be one done by that point too. Like there might be I think the low voltage fast will be done completely, and then the instability section will be halfway done probably. I hem and haw a lot. Like I'm a little bit perfectionistic. Like I have mentors look at it, give me feedback, that kind of thing, and then I redo them. Like I have stuff done, I just want to redo it, which maybe is not a good thing. Like it probably doesn't need to be redone. So
Triona, it's our pleasure.
That's awesome.
Joshua, how do people get a hold of you, man?
They can reach out to me at neurofeedbackcare.com. They can obviously message us on here. We're always happy to have people comment. I like being here. I love the traffic.
It was great. Busy day. And then Anthony, somebody wants to get in the weeds with you and nerd out. Where do we send them?
Yeah. Science and technology discoveries, but also Brainmaster is even more nitty gritty. And people like Josh are also on there. So I think it's an incredible opportunity, because you can be meeting people like you guys, like Josh and Pete and everyone else on there. So it's really cool. And Jay, of course. So.
And then I do a Thursday show, which everybody's always welcome to attend, and we address some of the stuff that we talked about today. So if anybody has any questions that we missed here, Pete at NeuroNoodle.com, send them over to me. I'll put them to the list, and when I have a little conversation with Jay and Dr. Marie, we'll go over it. We appreciate everybody showing up. Triona, Hita, Radar, Lynn, Joy. Come on, Joy. Come on back, Joy. Who else do we have? Radar, Sonia. Man, busy. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. ISNR. Yeah. Oh, man. All right, everybody, that's it. I got to shut off the pizza ovens. That's it.
All right. I hope you guys have a great evening.
Brainmaster Facebook, yes.
Yeah, Brainmaster EG Facebook group.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, have a great night. Thank you for everything.